Our next guest, this guy was just like an absolute pleasure to connect with. He was connect if you were on the AI Advantage Summit that I run last month. He was connected through Nancy Jutton, who just an awesome woman, awesome human being. And I always find that when I find someone who's an awesome human, I grab them with both hands because they normally know other awesome human beings. And this guy is definitely one of them. We've got Joe, and I had to play with this, Joe. I had to listen to our recording back, and I'm freaking terrible with names. I haven't got the twang down. It's Joe Pallo, right?
Correct. Pallo, you got it.
Yes.
You got it. You
I
nailed
got
it.
right.
Yep.
So just a little bit about Joe before we say hello. So Joe is someone who's been a sales coach since 2017. And he's a game-changing trainer of top producers. Joe's guided hundreds of clients across multiple industries to double or triple their production without working harder. His point of difference is his emphasis on mastering the art of emotional connection, building on 35 years of direct selling experience and well over 30,000 sales calls. Wow. He empowers top entrepreneurs to follow his earning sales system to bring about decisive and lasting results across industries. Now, Joe, when we connected, he just launched his new book and he said to me, Jay, I just wanted to get one bestseller. And I think you got 8 or 9, right? Is that Joe?
Actually, we got 10. 10
Oh,
in
so,
Amazon,
sorry
10,
to brag.
10 categories. Yep.
Like 10. We're almost there. Welcome to the Influence Mastery Summit, Joe. It's great to have you here.
Thanks. Good to be here. And just a quick thought. Your previous guest said some really cool stuff. Crystal, I just love the part to be willing to say no to business that doesn't align to you. What an awesome lesson. And Steve, the conscious competence, that's a scary world because people don't know what they're doing. They can't teach it. And I'm glad you kind of recognize that. And love the fact you say the fastest way to cash is communication. So good stuff.
Yeah, 100%. That's that. That's a great lesson, that one. So today we're going to be talking about, and it sounds like a bit of a bizarre title, but I'm sure you'll tell us what it's all about. How to sell nothing. It's a logical way to make an emotional sale. So I think it would be important, Joe, just for people to just understand how you put together and how you created a system where they sell nothing. And I think that might be a really good starting point. If you can just give us the background as to how you come up with your methodology and your system.
Sure. And it's basically based on the thought that, well, a quick story I think everyone's been in. We all have gone out and had these great sales calls where on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10, where they're laughing at your jokes, they're asking questions, they're telling you about, what's important to them. And they even end the meeting with, can you come back in 2 weeks and like to see your proposal? We've had it. It's like a Norman Rockwell, cozy fire. We love sales at those meetings. And then we come back 2 weeks later or a month later, and we come back in and that meeting's different. It's not the same. In your mind, you're thinking, why isn't it the same? But it's not. It's like you're sitting on a block of ice and they're not asking questions and they're looking at their watch and looking at the computers and they say, I need to think about it. Call me next quarter. And it never goes away. And How to Sell Nothing came back with, what's wrong? What am I doing wrong at that second meeting? Problem starts at the first meeting. See, in sales, there's two things or two buckets need to happen, two sales that need to happen. There's the logical bucket or a logical sale. There's an emotional bucket, emotional sale. Both are important, but if we have to pick one, we hear the emotional because the emotions make things happen. The logic is needed to confirm it, but if you don't have them emotionally engaged, there's nothing to confirm. So at that first meeting, we have both buckets full. We're going to get the next step. That's our goal in sales. That's my job as a salesperson, to fill up the logical bucket and the emotional bucket. Let's talk about the buckets. The logical bucket is filled with my voice. I'm the expert. I've got a marketing department behind me. We have all of the data. My voice fills up that bucket and makes that sale. But that bucket's finite. If you have a bucket of water, it's impossible to put more water in it. If you have a client who's logically sold, it's impossible to sell more logic. The emotional bucket, this is the key of selling nothing, it's filled with their voice. It's what they want and why they want it. Emotions are weird and fickle things. They don't make sense and they change all the time. But I need to get that bucket filled to get to the next step. But the emotional bucket has holes in it because emotions change. At that first meeting, we had that great rapport and everything worked. We come back in 2 weeks later, the emotional bucket's empty. They will not engage until we get them emotionally engaged. And that's the biggest lesson of how to sell nothing, how to get them emotionally engaged. It's what they want and why they want it. And we need them to say it. That makes sense?
That's really important, and that makes a lot of sense, because one of the things people will often get is that I need to think about it. I need to reflect, right? And then, like you say, you come on either the second sales call or the follow-up call, some people might call it, and then it's really flat, right? And they just don't convert, and then they wonder why.
Yep.
So what are kind of some of the most common mistakes you see people making as it relates to selling people, if it's even selling people, Joe, because we're not really selling anything?
I'm good at selling nothing. So I wrote the book on it. But I think the first part is the understanding that in sales, whoever is talking is buying. In a selling situation, if I'm trying to sell you and I'm talking more than you are, I'm literally buying your objections. It's the importance of getting them talking more than me, what they want and why they want it. Also, a big problem is it's the show up, throw up presentation, where we go in and we brag about how good and great and wonderful my company does this. People don't care. One of my favorite things to say, or even that I coach on this, is if I was talking to you, Jay, and you say, well, Joe, what do you do? I say, I help sales leaders and sales consultants grow and triple and grow their business. But if it's all right, can I skip over the part where I brag about myself and say how good and great and wonderful? I like to ask you some questions. And that's just so refreshing for the people on the other side of the table, because they really don't care. But literally, it's getting me into my fact finder to find out how I can sell them.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And I know you were here when I was talking about the arc triangle of understanding, and it's that piece of, I've always found that the number one gift I have as a coach is absolutely be objective, but I cannot be objective if I'm not first curious. And I have a relentless need to find things out. I just have a hunger for it. So anyone I meet, I'm kind of going, what's the reason you do that? Because I have an obsession, not as some people say, Jay, you're like a motivational speaker or something. And I'm like, no, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm just obsessed with finding out what motivates people to do what they do. And that drives this insatiable curiosity to find out more. And so as it relates to sales, then what I'm hearing and what you're saying is you really need to be that person that's kind of like, let me just ask you, a bit like a doctor trying to diagnose a patient.
It's funny you say that, because that's a Joeism, if you want. Doctors can't fix you until you tell them how or why. I can't sell anyone until they tell me how or why. You're spot on. It's the questions. If I have a client and it's part of the free gift, how to work people through that piece, all I need to do is get them to tell me what they want, why they want it, how it's fixable, what happens if they don't fix it. And I just sell that. The product doesn't matter. It's easier to sell what they want to buy than sell what I want to sell. And we think in sales, we come in, I got to sell this. And that's the wrong. We got to turn that around. What do they want to buy? Let them tell you. Let them tell you why they want it, what it fixes, what it can do. Just sell that. Your product comes along with it.
Yeah, it makes me think about sales as a way of convincing. And I think there's this idea that in order to sell someone, I need to be the guy that's like, hey, this is the best book you've ever read and you must read it. It's amazing. And it's this and it's this, right? Rather than going, hey, what types of books do you like reading?
Well, sales can be a 4-letter word for some people. It's just repulsive. I am not a good salesperson, but people buy from me all the time. Huge difference. And I kind of really push back on that. Sales is a conversation. If I have a product and I have you tell me what you need, what your problems are, how it fixes, what happens if it is fixed, what you can do with that time. If we fix this problem and we took 2 hours out of your week, what would you do with those 2 hours? That's all their emotional engagement. They're buying that.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So you're talking about getting connected to their emotions then. So when we're talking about getting connected to emotions, how do you instigate and elicit, let's say, people's values? So we heard Crystal talk before, getting deeply connected to people's passions, getting deeply connected to people's values creates energy, and energy creates momentum, right? In a movement in that instance. So what are some ways that people can like elicit like what is most valuable to them, what is most important to them as it relates to their products? Because I'm sure people go in and are like, hey, I'm gonna funnel them with my questioning into my product to make it fit rather than staying open. So what are some ways you normally recommend to people to start to get people to open up and start talking about the things that are important to them, that are aligned to their vision, and then tying your product together with that?
There's 2 things. These are duplicatable things you can apply today or apply tomorrow. The first part, in sales, if someone asks you a question or ask me, Joe, do you do executive level coaching? Yep, I do it all the time. I just did it yesterday. It's what I specialize in. That's the right answer. But if someone asks me that, Joe, do you do executive level coaching? I said, yeah, I have before, but just curious. I want to make sure I answer your question in the right context. Why did you ask that? In other words, what they ask is important. Why they ask it is extremely important. And I want to know that before I answer my question, because I'm so much more in tune. My answers give them so much more value. So what they ask is important. Before you answer that, just take a minute and think, something happened in that person's past that caused them to ask that question. I want to know what that is before I answer it. That's a way of drawing them in. That's part of the relationship. It's filling their emotional bucket.
Yeah.
The second part, and this is really the meat and potatoes of it, it's asking what I call dig in questions. You get an answer, you dig in and you ask more. And basically, if they're saying something, back in my mind, I'm thinking, well, why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? And you can't ask it because that's kind of creepy and weird, but you can ask it a couple of different ways. A dig in question is, what do you mean? How so? What does that look like? What else? Tell me more about that. Can you give me an example? I'll ask dig in question after dig in question because they're telling me their why. And I'm going to need that to close, whether it's in 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 weeks. It's what else? What do you mean? How so? What does that look like? Can you give me an example? That's all we need to do to get them engaged. And now they're more apt to take my prescription. Just like your doctor, you're more apt to take his prescription if you've told him why you're hurting and what's going on. Same thing as in sales.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I'm so glad you said that. And I want everyone to really land what he said there, because one of the things I always ask when I'm coaching someone, right? Because you're, Joe, I'm sure, be familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And one of the things they say in NLP is the map is not the territory. And what they mean by that is that what people are saying is not actually necessarily what they mean.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Well, the map is not exactly what's really going on in here. It's just their best effort at communicating with you. And you, as the coach in my case, and in your case as the sales person who's trying to sell them, or not sell them, you're testing me here.
Let them buy.
Let them buy.
Right.
You need to elicit what that is. And when I'm coaching people, one of the questions, people will ask me a question. They'll be like, Jay, how would someone do this? And I'll ask them the question. Well, let me just check. What's the reason you're asking that question? Yep. And they'll go, well, there was this one time that someone did this to me and caused me a bunch of pain, and I'm not sure whether it's the right way, or blah, 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 whatever. And it's not until you get in touch with that reality. And again, I always go back to the art triangle of understanding, get in touch with that reality. Yep. Can I truly influence them? And that's why it's such a powerful point that you made around that.
It's again, I strive never to teach, speak, coach, or train until I get someone emotionally engaged. It doesn't work. That's my job as a salesperson. That's my first focus. The logic part, I can do that. And that's not the part. It's getting them engaged, what they want and why they want it. And then I can go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So people have objections all the time to buying, right? You heard me, I think you maybe heard my story in the beginning, paying $36,000. I was like, it's not the right time. And I was telling myself some bullshit around it, when really it was just fear, right? Fear of like not having the money initially, then fear of it not really working out or not having everything I need to make it a success. And there was probably more fears there, but I managed to coach myself through. So what are like, there are some objections that people have. Like, what's your kind of approach to handling objections?
First, it's our thinking. And when I get an objection, it's not a big deal. We're supposed to get them. We're in sales. We're supposed to get more no's. And it's basically, they're not saying no. They're still in the game. An objection is just, okay, they just need more information. So that's a first understanding of it. Second part is I want to repeat it back to clarify that I know exactly what it is. And then I'll go through the next part is I want to, what I call box them in. What I hate is addressing one objection, going through and answering it, and then find out there's another one. So if someone gives me an objection, I'll say, okay, understand that piece. Besides that, if it's financing, besides working out the numbers, is there anything else that's holding you back from going forward? Now I can address one objection and then go on. The way I answer it is it's one of the processes. It's in How to Sell Nothing. It's called weak, strongest, stronger. Weak, strongest, stronger. And I know we're in sales. We have these plans. These are real simple ideas. We can apply it and real quick. But when I get an objection, I'm in a weak spot. Acknowledge it. I need to go where they're strongest, something they've done, something they do, their work, something they've touched. Talk about that, get them talking about that, and use that strength, the same reasons to make my weak position stronger. So it's weak, strongest, strongest. Here's what it can sound like. Say I'm selling insurance to a couple and they're in the medical field. Okay. And they're saying the objection is, Joe, we've got your insurance. We bought it a couple of years ago. We're happy with it. We're good. That's my objection. Okay. So I'm weak right now. I go to where you're strongest. Okay. Just curious. I want to ask a couple of questions. You're in the medical field, right? Well, yes. And isn't it true that your medical technology is changing at an incredibly fast pace, where things we did 3 years ago today are almost considered barbaric? Yeah. And there's new prescriptions and new products and new procedures coming out all the time. Yep. And your job as a doctor is to inform your clients about the newest products. Even though there's something you gave them 3 years ago, prescription, there's something better. That's your job. And if you don't do it, are you serving your clients? No. That's what we're talking about insurance. When I sold you that insurance 3 years ago, that was the best we had. You've aged. We had some things change. I'd like to talk to you about some new ideas. Weak, strongest, stronger.
Yeah, that's nice. It's almost like you've just walked them. Like, I always look at it and I go, what are people's blind spots? And it's your flexibility. Like, and I always think about this in a context of coaching, but also in sales and marketing. It's your ability to think dynamically that's really going to determine your ability to influence that sale or that objection, that person. Because if you, like you were saying, I think you said before, like you lose the sale pretty much in your own thinking, your own mind. If you cannot navigate that and find that, help them see not just like this side of the bottle, but this side as well,
yep,
as it relates to them, then you lose your position in it.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things people have said to me before, Joe, is that I just go blank. I just go blank when, people give me an objection. So how would you coach someone through handling that and being better equipped to deal with it?
Well, it's going to sound bad. When it comes to sales, I'm a script guy. And a lot of people say, I can't do that because I sound robotic. And I just can't do that. And I think, as hard as it is in sales to get someone's name, get their number, or get referred to them, get them on the phone, get in a meeting, and have that conversation. And if you allow yourself to sound robotic, you might be in the wrong career. There's no way, as hard as I work for a name, I will never let myself be robotic. But to answer your question, there's only 4 objections. Have answers memorized for each one of them. It's the same thing. We know what they are. It's price, procrastination. It's not having a need, and it's not having the time or use for it. But we know those objections. Memorize it. Yes, you have to tailor it, but if you know what you're going to say in a script, you're answering or you're interacting at a different level. Most people in sales are thinking, "What am I going to say? What am I going to say?" What You're not listening. If you know what you're going to say, you can listen better. You're going to deliver the consistent message, because in sales, if it's messy and we don't know what works. If you're saying the same thing and we have a problem, give me your pitch. I can fix it. If you say something different, I don't know what it is. I don't know what to fix. But if you're also saying the memorized presentation or the answers to your objections, you're a heck of a lot more confident.
Yeah.
Sales and business is given to confident people.
Yeah.
So I would say write down your 4 biggest objections, write down answers, attach a story to it that's with permission, professionally, and with relevance. That's how you answer your objections. We have the answers ourselves. We know what they are.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because it creates certainty, right? So when someone goes into a state of shock, I don't know what to do, uncertain, right? By being prepared in that way, because they know they're coming and they've maybe rehearsed them, or they know what they're going to say, they are more certain and they have more conviction in it. And then they can lead that individual rather than that person lead them. And that's a really, really powerful point. And it's kind of like anything, right? When you're trying to make a decision, making decisions are freaking hard, right? For anyone, right? People might, oh, that's a limiting belief, Jay. Making decisions are hard, right? And everybody's got their own reasons why they don't make decisions. And a lot of the time there's emotion in it. And it's kind of like helping someone else to get to a decision. It's hard. And that's why I always say, like, if you can't influence yourself, it's hard to influence someone else. So if you can get yourself to a state of certainty, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to get other people to a state of certainty, whether they can make a decision of yes or no. Is it the thing for me? Because I'm sure, Joe, you're not a fan of the somewhere in between, maybe.
No, those go nowhere. I want a yes or a no, and I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
It's the maybes kill us. And how many people we have in our pipeline that are maybes? Odds are we sit there thinking we have something. If we look back, they're just logically sold. Those maybes, a good way to go back to them and re-engage, if you can get a meeting, get them to fill up their emotional bucket. Hey, just curious, we met a couple months ago. We talked about some ideas. I just want to get some feedback. What started you thinking about this in the first place? Well, tell me more about that. Well, what does that look like? Can you give me an example? All your dig-in questions, get them to fill up their emotional bucket. That's what's holding them back. That's the maybes. That's where they're half sold. We need to go back and do that piece.
Yeah, that's powerful. One of the things I was going to ask you, Joe, is if you know these objections are coming in sales and on the sales call, how would you recommend people approach that in their marketing so they can pre-handle the objection?
Well, it's the old cliche that whoever answers with objections, whoever brings it up first wins. We all know that piece. Mentally, I look at it. I'm on one side of the table. They're on the other side of the table. In between us on the table are a bunch of chips. And each chip has an objection written. I've got a guy. I've got to talk to my boss. I've got it, whatever. They're not going away. We know what they are. Bring them up. And you get to take that chip off the table. If you don't, there's a good chance that's what's going to kill the next step. So we know the objections. It should be part of our presentation. And actually, you should be asking questions that get them to answer it in the first place. In the first part of your I guess, the data gather piece.
Yeah, it's a great point. And even if anyone tuned into my talk that I was doing earlier, Joe probably seen right through it, but he'd have seen that I was getting you to talk about your bullshit objections up front, right? So that we could handle them in the conversation, right? So that if you did decide to book a call with me, you wouldn't be like, no, Joe, I don't have the time, or this is not a problem for me, or it's not urgent, because I created urgency. And so I'm kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit there, but if the season died, they'd see what I'm doing. But this is what we all need to be doing if we're going to influence the people in our marketplace. So,
Absolutely. Sales it's like baking a cake. You have a recipe and you follow that in order, you're going to get a cake. If
Yeah.
you start mixing up the order and don't answer the objections, you're just like baking everything first and then putting it together. You're going to get a mess. It's a process, and we have to understand that process.
Yeah, 100%. And the guy that I alluded to earlier, the guy that coached me and helped me, he's the guy that sold me. I paid him $48,000 in total, 48,800, and he was the guy that taught me about sequencing questions and sequencing things in a way that helped me to become a better coach, helped me to influence my own thinking, but also helped me to be able to influence others in business. So it's bang on the money what you're talking about here, Joe.
That's the my free gift. Go to convertsalesfaster.com. Convertsalesfaster.com. I can put it in the chat.
We've got it. Rebecca's got it.
That's the process, because in sales we have a plan, just like a battle plan. The night before, we're all organized. The battle starts, take the plan, throw it out the window. Sales calls, we have thoughts it's going to go this way. As soon as that conversation starts, take it out the window. When it's the earning system, it's a way for us to go through this process and really walk them through. Just real quick, E stands for evaluate the current reality. That's your data gather. I have to ask enough questions to know what they have. It's an apples to apples comparison. I have to ask enough questions to know what type of apples they have. Apples to oranges, I still need to ask enough questions to know what type of apples they have. A, what are the advantages? What do they like about what they currently have? A lot of times salespeople push back on that, say, I don't like doing that because I'm talking them into staying where they're at. I like doing that because no one else does that. I get different results because I do things different. Two, asking what do they like about their current vendor screams confidence. But the biggest reason, Jay, they're telling me they're hot buttons. Whatever they like, back in my mind, I'm thinking, I got to close on that in 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 weeks. They're telling me they're hot buttons. So it's E and A. R's revised. What do they want to change? That's why we're there. That's the main reason why they're going to go forward. The N, who can say no? Want all the decision makers in the room. I, this is the biggest step. Interpret back what they just said. Just for clarity, I'm going to take 5 minutes and repeat back what you just said and just go on a rant. And you'll hear things like, crap, Pallo, you said it better than I did. I haven't even started selling. Mentally, I'm on the same side of the table. He's thinking, this guy gets me, and I'm not even talking about my product. A second N, nothing. What if nothing changes? And then I'll ask what else, because that gets a sense of urgency, and I need that. They'll give me a fluff answer. Well, what else? I'll dig in a little bit more on that. And then the G, what is the gain? What is the pay value if they fix this? So that's kind of the process that I use, and I coach on that it's duplicatable, and you're not going to go in that order. We can mess it up, but we can still get those key pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds really powerful. And Rebecca's put your gift in the chat so people can go to your website and they can download that for sure. Joe, I just want to say a big thank you. I meant what I said. You're a great human to be connected to. I really enjoy our conversation, and just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks. It's been a blast. I've enjoyed it.